Welcome to the Manuscript Academy podcast,
Brought to you by
a writer
and an agent
who both believe that education is key
The beauty is the people you meet along the way.
and that community makes all the difference.
Here at the Manuscript Academy, you can learn the skills, make the connections, and have access to experts, all from home.
I'm Julie Kingsley.
And I'm Jessica Sinsheimer.
Put down your pens, pause your word counts, and enjoy.
Hello, friends. We are doing a new feature where we are asking our faculty agents what they wish they had in their inboxes. Today, we're talking about commercial fiction and how you can make your work appeal to the broadest audience possible. We're happy to welcome Alyssa Jennette. She's an agent at Stonesong Literary, and she's been our friend for more than a decade. Over to you, Alyssa.
My name is Alyssa Jennette. I have been an agent with the Stonesong Literary Agency for almost 10 years now. My background is in illustration. I have a degree from the Maryland Institute College of Art. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I represent authors and illustrators. And I've been had just the great pleasure of having a lot of success with both sides.
Okay, so tell us what kind of works you're looking for.
So I do pretty much everything across the board. I do fiction, nonfiction, children's, adult, illustrated, prose. I think probably the only things I don't really do are like history kind of books or erotica, romance kind of deal. So it's very broad. But I would say that the most interests that I have right now are in fiction or nonfiction about organizing, local activism, literacy for all ages, and especially the changing cultural function of religion and other self-identified groups right now, and the way that I think that certain groups have become churches in their own right, like fandoms and things like that. That's really interesting to me. Obviously, I'm always on the lookout for illustrators who I think are doing interesting things, not even just in picture books or children's. Like most of the illustrators I work with don't necessarily do children's work. I am always looking out for literary fiction. Things are obviously skewing a lot more commercial these days. And obviously, like there's a certain level of commercial hook that everybody wants. But at the end of the day, I want people who are taking risks and doing exciting things with their concepts and with the way that they format their narratives.
Can you tell us a little bit more about why things are skewing commercial and what a commercial hook is?
For sure. It's pretty clear to see through, like when we look at things like film, they're a lot more obvious and like advertised to the public, that things like, for instance, like big franchises like the Marvel Universe or IP in general, different remakes or sequels or things like that, that's sort of an obvious commercial example of things that people recognize. People will trust sort of the outcome that they'll be willing to go spend money and know what they're getting. And in the way that translates to books can also be through IP, intellectual properties that you are familiar with, retellings, sequels, series, that kind of thing. But also just a way of structuring a narrative that is like very linear, 3-act structure, pretty straightforward, a protagonist that you want to root for that is like very likable, a high stakes plot that's like a very like plot driven, like, you know, if X then Y, like these are the things that may happen and here's the outcome of those things. Overwhelmingly, I've seen from editors that they want a much more commercial structure like that. And as much as I like structures that take risks, I do think that there obviously has to be a certain level of understanding from the author perspective how to craft a narrative and create a format that does make sense to any reader. But if there's like a cool way to like get a twist in there, I love to see it.
If an author wanted to nudge a book a few notches toward commercial, how would they do it?
Nudging literary toward commercial is probably what a lot of people will have to be doing in the coming months and years. So I would say that a great way to do that is, if possible, to heighten the stakes in some way, maybe through a specific deadline or through just like much bigger consequences. Not necessarily like if it's something that's like a personal stakes, something that is a little bit more like terrifying and like life destroying. And then like, so it's and something that's like a lot more external, right? Like we're not necessarily lingering as much in the character's mind. I mean, that can definitely work. Like, I mean, a sort of typical example of that is like Gone Girl, which is obviously takes place in two characters' heads basically the entire time, but you're well aware of all of the ways that, you know, these people's lives could be ruined or they could go to prison, like if these things come to pass. So stakes like that level of high stakes has to come with something that has more interiority and more like literary quality in that regard.
Could you talk about it on a sentence by sentence level too? What someone would have to do to make their writing more commercial?
Sure, for sure. So literary writing obviously tends to be a little bit more, I guess you could say, stylish in a way. Obviously, your mileage may vary, but I think that commercial writing tends to be shorter sentences, more direct, more, for lack of a better word, obvious. Something that you're not necessarily working as hard to see the subtext of or get any hidden meaning from, or having to like really think too much about what a scene just conveyed to the reader.
One thing I like to joke is that you can understand commercial writing after one glass of wine. To understand literary writing, you need one glass of coffee.
Wow, that honestly is really brilliant. I had to remember that because that's honestly really smart. Yeah, read your literary fiction in the morning and your commercial fiction before bed.
Why do you think we're going more to commercial now? And what happens in the world to make the world go more literary so the literary writers don't panic?
Well, obviously, we are in a time, at least in America, although I think this is beyond America culturally, where, you know, people are having a little bit more struggle than maybe they have in other eras. And that means that generally speaking, with our entertainment, we want to exert less mental energy. And I think that commercial fiction does a lot to serve that impulse, which is completely understandable. That being said, I do think that there are places that, as wonderful as commercial fiction is, it's not necessarily giving us everything we could want. It's like any other diet, right? Like you can't only eat ice cream, as wonderful it is and as perfect a food as it is. Sometimes you do have to have some broccoli. So I think that we could stand to challenge ourselves a little bit more as readers, but also I think in that sense, there is a way, I think, to guide us that way, sort of through what I was saying before about like literary authors working to tweak their style a little bit to give commercial readers what they're looking for in terms of like stakes and excitement and suspense and payoff, while still obviously conveying something a little bit more than the sum of its parts.
I'm working on a theory as you're talking. Do you think it's all about holding attention? And when the world is loud, we need high stakes.
I think that that's a major part of it. I also think that generally there's not a ton of reward for sticking things out all the time. And we certainly don't live in a culture that values delayed gratification in pretty much any way. So if there's a way that we can almost like trick the audience in that regard to really hold on. I mean, and we've done it before. Like obviously there are brilliant and popular books that are, you know, hundreds of pages long that aren't necessarily having a reveal every chapter, right? I think that people do have the capacity for it. It's just something that we also kind of have to bring back the messaging about reading as, you know, a worthy and pleasurable exercise that you do have time for, right? Like I think that there's sort of a trick that, oh, well, you know, I only have time to, I mean, in some cases, like watch something on my phone. And it's like, look, I'm a lover of TikTok as much as the next person. But I am well aware how much time I am like putting into TikTok when I think, oh, okay, you know, it's just TikTok. So every video is like 2 minutes long, but like you're watching, you know, 50 videos and that does add up. And like you do have time to read just as much as you have time to do anything else on a screen.
Do you remember in the 90s when they released little tiny cookies and everyone thought they'd lose weight because the cookies were smaller, but then they ended up eating a whole box?
Yeah, like the 100-calorie pack kind of things.
Yeah.
Look, like Yeah, it's very challenging. We really are easily led. But not necessarily easily taught.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we need something that is scary to kind of like balance out the fear we are feeling in real life.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think there's a reason also that horror has had such a resurgence. Like there is something sort of like distracting and but also like, pleasurable about horror in that it's not happening to you, right?
It's
There
nice.
is like enough distance.
It's nice to be afraid of something that isn't real for a while.
Yes. Right. Yes. What a great way to put it. It is nice to be afraid of something that isn't real.
You went viral on TikTok for a video about agent life. Are you comfortable talking more about that?
For sure. For sure. I
Te-
mean, like, I went viral for like a couple of videos. One in particular about that was associated with the strike that HarperCollins had a couple of years ago, sort of tangentially. I was talking mostly about the ability for companies to pay a living wage and people living in New York despite not having a living wage, even though, of course, New York is a high cost of living city. And of course, my videos about describing the day in the life of an agent and what we do and what our responsibilities are. People are very interested in that because by and large, it's like kind of like an obscure or opaque kind of business. Like, I mean, I certainly didn't really know what it was until I basically started doing it. So if I can offer a little bit of insight into what that looks like, and honestly, not even just people who work with me, but what people who are interested in a traditional publishing path should come to expect from their agent. And obviously, everybody's different. I'm not saying that every single thing that I do is the right way, but I'm hopeful that it'll give a better baseline for what people should expect from their professional partnership with anybody, an agent or an editor or a publisher, whether or not they move forward with a traditional path. Hopefully, they can at least have a little bit more insight into what the landscape looks like.
Okay, almost done. Second to last question. What does it feel like when you find a book you love?
When I find a book that I love, I'm just really excited and really relieved. Not because I'm reading terrible stuff all day. That's just not true. But, there's stuff that's good. Obviously you see stuff that's good, but you're like, oh, it's missing the sort of X factor, if you will. But when you find something that you really feel like, not only is this great to read, but I really feel like I know what to do to get this book over the line. That's like a very gratifying and exciting and fun thing to like that all that potential and all that anticipation is really cool. And then you get the satisfaction of course, reading something that's really lovely or fun or exciting. And you just get like, it's really exciting to be a part of that. Honestly, even whether or not somebody signs with me, it is always really a gift to be able to read something that I know is going to sell and do well. And this has happened to me a couple of times, which is, of course, always a little bittersweet, but it's so awesome to first of all, have my taste affirmed, right? And to know that that author is succeeding.
What is your favorite part about being an agent?
My favorite part about being an agent is working with my clients and being able to guide them as best as I can through the process of publishing, especially submission, especially the contract once we do make a sale, just to be able to answer their questions. It's again kind of one of those like affirming situations where it's like, oh yeah, no, I have been doing this for a while and I pretty much know what I'm talking about, most of the time. And of course, to be able to see the book in print and see how happy they are, like to see their satisfaction and to be able to grow their career and to have their trust. Even for the clients I don't sell right away, it is like really amazing to see how much that they're willing to work on this with me and to trust the process. Even obviously when it can be difficult or an uphill battle or frustrating, and we all get impatient or frustrated or it's like angry. But I really, people really don't want to give up, and they really do believe that we're going to find the right way forward, whether that's with another book or trying a different editor or a different way forward. And it's just like a real joy to know that there is still a way that people can work together to make something beautiful happen in art, in publishing, in books, in business, but in something that contributes to the culture.
We are so glad that you joined us. And as always, we appreciate your feedback. Just head on over to the iTunes store and let us know what you think. It not only helps us make this podcast be the best it can be, but it also affects our ratings within the iTunes platform.
We'd love to hear from you. If you're feeling brave and want to submit your page for our First Pages podcast, you can send it to academy@manuscriptwishlist.com with First Pages podcast in the subject line. We'd also just love to hear from you.
And if you'd like to learn more about the Manuscript Academy and everything we have to offer, just jump on over to manuscriptacademy.com.